How's it going, guys? And welcome to the showdown between the Empire led by Boris Todbringer and the Tomb Kings, who are going to be led by Setcher the Imperishable. I also think this is the first time we're going to see the Bone Giant here on the channel, so my apologies for getting this out to you guys, but this thing definitely looks really cool, and hopefully it doesn't destroy my entire army. So as far as my army goes, I'm going to be using kind of a new style of Empire build. So since the Queen and the Crone DLC, they did indeed fix the handgunner bug. So for any of you guys that are just joining Total War and maybe didn't know about this, historically, if there was like a valid target for handgunners, so let's just say there was some Ushapti right here, other targets that they could hit and weren't obstructed from seeing, they would actually like march into the front line and like try and engage them in melee or just get really close so they could shoot them. And it was really frustrating. I can't tell you how many battles I was in as the Empire, and your handgunners would march up and be like, why are they in melee with that enemy Iroh Titan, or just things like that. And it was really tough. So anyways, we do have an entire secondary line of handgunners, which are new and improved. And they definitely get some really, really good firepower. And now with their the line of sight bug being fixed, on top of that, we're going with the Light Wizard. So the Light Wizard, actually, I've kind of started to like his supplementary abilities as well. So the Baroness Time Warp is an AoE effect. So it hits everyone in the area. It's really good with Cav. If an enemy's like kiting you, give them speed. And it also gives melee attack in a pretty big radius. I actually think it's pretty good in the front line as well if you have like great swords. We have the Net of Amentok, which is obviously very important if you're using a very range-heavy build. So we have handgunners, and our front line isn't of the best quality. It has really high melee defense and anti-large, so against like skeletons, it'll hold its own, and it won't buckle quickly, but it's not going to win essentially. So if there's some Tomb Guard, eventually your opponent will get through, and it's going to be nice to have Nets of Amentok to kind of slow their roll a little bit and allow your handgunners to do some heavy lifting. So we got the Light Wizard. We do have Boris Todbringer up on his Griffin here, so he's a pretty good choice. Karl Franz is also okay against like big armored constructs. He could really duel Settra. You could take out these Ushapti Grapos and do some work against the Bone Giant. But the problem being, if they have like 2 or 3 Ushapti Grapos and now the Bone Giant, they can do a ton of damage to him. And without Lore of Life, I feel like you really need to go with Boris. It's quite a bit safer, and he can heal himself with the Midland Rune Fang, which is one of his items. So on top of that, guys, we're getting a little bit hog wild here. We do have the Hellstorm Rocket Battery. So pretty much all of the Empire artillery did get buffs as well. And I like how this is like the only guy covering his ears here. Well, I guess other ones were. But you can see I'm shooting into some skeleton warriors. I was hoping that he would have like a lot of Tomb Guard for me to tear apart. But you can see that the Hellstorm Rocket Battery now has like the AP tooltip right here. So if we look, 314 missile damage with, I guess armor piercing. There's so much information there. But anyways, the armor piercing is quite a bit better on these now, I think. I'm pretty sure there were some buffs. We do have some spears guarding that. So hopefully the Hellstorm can tear apart these skeletons. And it looks like it's doing an okay job. One group of the Knights of the Blazing Sun just to be shot cav against infantry. You don't want them fighting against constructs per se, but they can, hold their own with their charge bonus of 78 and 40 melee attack. But it looks like there's a big ambush here in the forest. Looks like some skeleton horsemen, a couple Necropolis Knights with halberds. So that's pretty spooky stuff. Top of that, we have the Royal Altdorf Griffites. I don't know if they're worth it in this matchup. They do have much better stats than the Royal Griffins, than the Royal, Demogryph Knights. But one of the big mainstays of these guys is that they cause fear. So against Tomb Kings, that obviously doesn't really matter, but yeah, they're still really strong and can tear up constructs, but they're also going to be a super juicy targets for the Bone Giant. So I probably should have thought that through before I picked them, but we'll see how it goes. Silver bullets here, and that's it for my army. For my opponent, he does have skeleton horsemen, probably to harass the back line. Definitely a solid choice going after handgunners. 2 groups of Necropolis Knights with halberds, and these guys are basically like the Tomb King equivalent of Demogryph Knights. They're not quite as good, lower combat stats. They do have poison, and I think they're a little slower, 66 speed compared to, let's see what my guys have. My guys actually have 75, so I have the speed advantage there, but it still gives the Tomb King something to work with, and we'll see how those spooky boys do. For his front line here, he does have a couple skeleton warriors, so he has 4 of those, kind of going with a very similar tactic to myself, where you're going to kind of forsake the quality of your front line and really allow yourself to have a heavy firing line with Ushapti Grapos. You can see this giant angry, Bone Giant up here is going to be taking some las cannon shots at me. 2 Grapos, Settra the Imperishable, anti-large AP, always pretty good against Empire. A couple skeleton spears. And the Bone Giant. So that's pretty much it. He's going to be getting a lot of value out of that Bone Giant probably against my army. So here comes the first shot, and the battle is underway. You can see it shoots in there. Thankfully, just barely. I think it just literally got one unfortunate handgunner. So that guy's definitely pretty unfortunate there. But right now, I realized there was some wild action in the forest here. So you can see my Knights of the Blazing Sun have engaged with these skeleton horsemen. We're going to be crushing them really, really quickly. I don't think they're weak to fire, but they're squishy nonetheless. And a very high DPS unit like Knights of the Blazing Sun should be okay. But I didn't actually see the halberds coming in, so I try to pull out here, and I think a couple of my guys are a little bit overextended, so I'm definitely going to take some casualties there, which is unfortunate. Over here, you can see my handgunners are advancing, but now the Bone Giant's going to be probably focusing down my handgunners here, I think. Looks like the Ushapti Grapos are also shooting in as well, and there's the last cannon shot coming right into the handgunners. It doesn't really shine until it hits like a large target. It's not really meant against such things. But anyways, the Empire front line is advancing here. You can see the state troops of Karl Franz are going to be, well, I guess Boris. It's not Midland technically, but there comes another last cannon shot right into the face of my guys. But they're going to return a heavy volley of fire. You can see all this, powder weaponry coming up into the grill of the Chosen of the Gods. And I believe they start with 9 models, so they haven't lost one yet, but some really, really good HP damage so far. Now the state troops are going to engage the spearmen with shields. Will hold for quite some time. So if we do a stat comparison, yeah, their stats are quite a bit better than skeletons, so they should win in prolonged combat unless Cetra is going to be buffing with some witchcraft. I tried using the Hellstorm rocket batteries actually on the Chosen of the Gods. I was like, hey, that didn't do so bad with the new AP values, but obviously you still want to use it against infantry. You can see right here, my handgunners are forced off by that focus fire from the Great Bows as well as the Bone Giant. But I also do have this other group of handgunners pushing up and putting some pressure, but my opponent, very well played, knowing his Ushabti Great Bows have better range than me, are going to pull back, and then, my handgunners can't reach them anymore. So, knowing there's a big battle back here, I do get my Demogryph Knights and my Knights of the Blazing Sun engaged in Boris. And I'm basically like, all right, we'll just kind of hold them in place in the front line with the Spearmen, and, hopefully we can win from there. And then the handgunners actually turn around and just start peppering down these sneaky snakes. So you can see that one, unfortunately, for my opponent goes down. But really good withering gunfire from the Empire handgunners over there. And, man, I really like using handgunners again. It's quite a bit of fun. So you can see I do get a net of Ammontok on these Necropolis Knights. They're really getting burned down very, very aggressively here by that handgunner fire. And then it looks like some of my troops are just polishing off some of these Necropolis Knights, Knights of the Blazing Sun, and the Royal Altar of Griffites with Barona's Time Warp. They're going to be pretty fast, up to 93 speed, which is really, really cool for kind of hunting these guys down. In the front line, though, it looks like my Spearmen with shields do unfortunately get broken off. It was probably because of some of Cetra's witchcraft, so the Skeleton Warriors are going to chase those guys off. The other ones are holding pretty well, despite the fact that they're heavily outnumbered. But he still has a lot going on back here, and you can see now I have switched my Hellstorm rocket battery to just kind of hammer into these guys. So it's making some decent contact, and let's see its kills. I wonder what it's got. 38 kills is not bad at all, so I'm going to keep shooting in there, hopefully melting some of these skeletons. And now you can see that my front line is buckled. I'm having to use my handgunners to shoot Skeleton Warriors, which isn't the best, but with their silver shields, but you got to do what you got to do. I don't really have too many other options. So the Hellstorm rocket battery continuing to rain some heavy fire right there, and some pretty solid damage. Definitely happy with it so far. And right now my Cav Force is in really good shape. So the Royal Altar of Griffites is very healthy. The Knights of the Blazing Sun are in good shape, and he did form ranks with some of these spears to kind of screen me out. But I get my own spearmen. If I did have an auxiliary, I pull them up, and then I'm going to intercept these guys and hopefully get into the cookie jar. But he has some pretty good defenses. Thankfully, my handgunners are still applying some really good pressure, and you can see that the Bone Giant gets a massive shot on my Royal Altar of Griffites. It looks like it's able to take out a couple models. And right here, we're able to finish off the last of the Necropolis Knights. But this is a little bit scary because despite the fact that this looks good, you can see the Bone Giant up on the hill. Oh no, Dad's firing his bow. So he's going to just wind up right here and just look at the HP of my guys if this makes contact. And also the Ushabti Great Bows are really good against Cav as is. So he just has so much stopping power up on this hill. So we're just going to get straight up Last Samurai right here as we charge in. You can see some of my Royal Altar of Griffites. Some of those other guys are not in the best shape, but we're going to try and shut them down. So what I do is knowing that, I wanted to pull Cetra away here, and I figured Boris could take a beating for a minute. So I land Boris Todbringer over here to fight the Chosen of the Gods, knowing that if he does take damage, I can just run away, he can heal, things will be okay. So we're just going to fight the Chosen of the Gods and try and wear him down. And in the meantime, you can see that these Ushabti Great Bows do get attacked, and it looks like he did summon his Ushabti here, so that's what it was. I was trying to remember why I didn't get to them easily. But he does summon his Ushabti, who are able to catch my Knights of the Blazing Sun. I use another Barona's Time Warp as well. And thankfully, this group of Ushabti is getting taken just face planting, just straight up face planting against these Royal Altar of Griffites who are pretty buffed up right now. So the Bone Giant is here. It's kind of ripe for the picking, but unfortunately, Cetra is just laying a whooping on Boris, so I use Foz Protection, giving armor and melee defense. And at this point, I basically just have to run. Also in the back of it's just absolutely wild. Some of these Skeleton Warriors are pushing through, so I'm having to retreat and just do covering fire with whichever one he then chases. I shoot in the back with my handgunners, just trying to whittle these guys down. And thankfully, shooting them in the back, they're not, if I'm not mistaken, they don't get their silver shield. So hopefully we can take out a lot. And you can also see the Hellstorm rocket batteries coming in to pound those guys. And it still has about 6 volleys left, which hopefully will be good. In the forest, these silver bullets are unfortunately having to run from Skeleton Spearmen. So well played by my opponent, getting a very cheap unit and kind of making me run with a very expensive unit. But in the back, it's just absolutely wild. You can see that the Bone Giant is just trying to snipe Boris out of the air. That was very stressful. Cetra is chasing off my Light Wizard. And guys, the balance of power is pretty heavily in my opponent's favor. And he also has his Summoned Ushabti, so my backline engagement kind of failed there. And the Demogryph Knights were dragged down. And now the Ushabti are coming in and just monster mashing some of my handgunners here, which is really unfortunate because I needed these guys to start shooting down that Bone Giant. And somehow the Chosen of the Gods were able to survive the wrath of Boris Todbringer with the assistance of Cetra. Yeah, so Demogryph Knights, I have 3 models. Right here, my Knights of the Blazing Sun are shattered, so they're pretty much gone. My Light Wizard's running. Probably going to get caught by Cetra, unfortunately. In Boris, I'm just like hiding from the Bone Giant with its anti-large missiles. It could definitely snipe Boris out. So you can see I'm just having to put the moves in. Oh, it just direct hit right there. Just so painful. But thankfully, like I said, if that had been Karl Franz, he'd probably be dead right now. So right here, the skeleton spears are just fighting against my spearmen. Pretty much a wet noodle contest here in the front line. But in the back, the Empire's kind of reforming ranks. So, you know, they have pushed back pretty far. I have some spearmen rallying here, and also my auxiliary spearmen who were originally defending the Hellstorm rocket battery are going to come up and fight these skeletons. I'm going to pull these handgunners back behind my spears and just kind of work down all these skeletons. And I was like, okay, so if I can kind of stabilize my back line, get all my handgunners back here that, you know, are originally routing, you know, I got 32 here. Right here, I have 47. If I could push up, you know, his missiles are almost out of ammunition. You can see the Chosen of the Gods are almost out, the Bone Giant's out. I can then advance up and hopefully kill him with, you know, that handgunner fire. I don't know, we'll see though. So the Silver Bolts are also retreating. Looks like Tetra is probably going to chase those guys off, which is very wise. And Boris right now realizing that these guys, Chosen of the Gods, are pretty vulnerable, is going to go in and try and snipe out a couple, break their leadership. But I keep disrespecting the Bone Giant. You can't be disrespecting this guy. He pops in here a little bit of friendly fire, but still makes really, really good contact with Boris Todbringer, which is super unfortunate. So things are getting pretty wild, guys. It's I know I've said that like 100 times this cast, but this is just an all-over-the-place game. So up here, the Spearmen are going to go downhill. The proud state troops of the Empire just karate-kicking these skeletons and, you know, prison shanking them with their spears. Oh, they're a pretty cool attack animation when they go in there. But the skeletons are disintegrating, which is really nice. So now my back line is stable. I got my handgunners here. These spears will probably come back, hopefully. And now the troops are pushing forward to help out Boris. So Boris is getting pretty beat up. He's got about 700 HP, give or take. The Bone Giant still has, it looks like it, one shot left. One shot, one kill. So here comes the Bone Giant. Boris is at about 600, 700 HP. And let's see how much damage he does if he's able to get him. And I was so bummed because my spearmen almost caught it, but they got terrified. I was like, no, they could have like stopped that shot. So Boris takes that right to the face. Takes him down about 400 HP, which is really bad for me. And thankfully, these spearmen, these proud state troops are able to advance and take down the Ushapti. So the Ushapti are probably just going to do a symmetrical side fall right there, which was very dramatic. But anyways, the spearmen with shields are now going to be advancing on the Bone Giant. But still, guys, the bounce power very heavily in my opponent's favor. It's going to be very tough to come back here. Hellstorm rocket battery got 123 kills. I'm pretty happy with that. Definitely not complaining. And the Silver Bullets are being chased off by skeletons. Maybe they could rally, though. This could be really huge because these guys are crumbling. They only have about, oh, they're healing as well. It's just up and forth, just barely stabilizing there. And if we look in the back, now it's time. So the Bone Giant has had enough of trying to snipe out Boris. It's out of ammo, so I'm not sure where it's going. It might just be marching. I'm pretty sure it has a lot of ammo, but you can see the gunfire of the Empire. The proud state troops, the handgunners rallying in the fourth quarter. Ever the underdogs, just taking all these shots at the Bone Giant, who has 9,000 HP, give or take. You know, well, at its max. And 80 armor, so it's pretty durable. The Spearmen are trying to kind of poke him, but he's advancing. But I do have a couple lines of Spearmen, as well as Boris, who I'm just trying to let Boris heal up as much as I can before I engage. And the big problem is you guys are probably looking at this like, oh, you know, Turin totally got this. No, Cetra is at full health coming out of the forest. So this is a very scary situation here. So I'm pulling up the Hellstorm rocket battery crew. You can see everyone has to fight right now. Nobody can stay in the back. Everyone has to fight to try and stop the Tomb Kings. Some of these spearmen are going to come up and try and do some work. And Boris, I do land, but this is still dangerous. This guy, you know, hits pretty hard with 400 weapon strength and really good AP. But you can see that the Bone Giant's actually disintegrating. So he's getting incredibly low right here. Boris is just doing his all. These spearmen are poking him. The handgunners are just standing firm, just kind of poking him down. And there goes the Bone Giant. So the Bone Giant hath fallen to the forces of the Empire. Very dramatic. You can see he takes a nice little fall there. And now it's basically just Cetra. So at this point, you know, I just get Boris up in the air. Wherever he chases, I just kind of swarm him with everything I can. And I'm just trying to line him up for some handgunner fire. And he's trying to snipe out Boris, which is definitely a good idea. But now you guys can see the bounce power is creeping back in my favor. And I'm kind of just chasing down Cetra and being very conservative. Because I knew there was no way Cetra could beat all these spears. It's just like, just being surrounded and just shanked by all these low-tier troops is so awesome. But the Spearman with Shield's doing a really good job. And even if he does break, unfortunately I'm obstructed with my handgunner. So what I do is I split them apart. So I attack with Boris a little bit. I retreat as soon as Cetra kind of retaliates and does like 300 damage instantly. And then as soon as Cetra breaks free, he takes fire. I charge in, and that's going to be all she wrote. So what a game. That was a very stressful one to play, but extremely fun. I really like using the Empire powder build. It's really fun. The Hellstorm rocket battery was did quite a bit of good work with 123 kills. The handgunners were just awesome against the Knights here. They did good against Ushapti. They were able to take down the Bone Giant in the fourth quarter, and it was just so gangster. A little bit of sloppy play with my Knights of the Blazing Sun and Demogryph Knights. I should have split them up because I had them in a big blob, which the Bone Giant just wrecked with his giant las cannon bow. But regardless, it was still a lot of fun. And yeah, well played to Flying Taco. It was a really cool build. He had like a very defensive, Ushapti and Bone Giant build, which I had to like really pressure, and it was kind of tough. It was tough. But those Necropolis Knights, I think that was, if he had used them a little bit more defensively, I think it would have been a much harder match. But it was still cool to get some of those net battles and other things like that over there. So very well played to my opponent. The Flying Taco was quite a glorious battle there. Look forward to facing off against you again, and hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing the Empire Powder game. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.